So welcome to this particular sessions. Today we're going to be doing a review of the automation facility that is available for HPE SimpliVity. And HPE SimpliVity actually provides the best way to say it, formal or actually is supported type of the automations interface through the REST API. And then we're going to go through it just to get understanding of how to do that. So today, I have my partner, Sijes Katumunda. He's actually is one of the person that developed a lot of the module binding, namely, the Python, the Ansibles, and Go, and so on. And I myself is Ron Dharma. I'm part of the SimpliVity Technical Marketing. And if you want to get in touch with us, the presentation here give us the Twitter handles that you guys can be able to forward any questions to us, and then we'll be able to respond to it through it. But we are part of the HPE Dev community. So if you have access to the Slack, or if you have access to the Twitters, the community Twitters, you're welcome to forward your questions also over there. And then, my teammates from the HPE Dev will be able to route it to me. So what are we going to do today? We're going to cover some of the reasoning or benefit of the SimpliVities, but at the other part, we'll actually also cover, the particular notebooks that we'll be able to go through today. So at HPE SimpliVity, as you're probably well aware, it's designed with the mindset to actually enables data centers practitioners, every IT administrator like me, because I actually help out in terms of providing the demos, POC, and also any type of the engagement with the tech marketings, including this particular presentations today. We want to be able to manage our data center efficiently. So with that, HPE SimpliVity is actually designed with the mindset of today's, the way that data center is actually deployed. You can see that HPE SimpliVity, when you deploy, it's all about ability to connect multiple cluster. So it nicely supports edge-driven data centers. So if you got your data center looks like a core with multiple different locations, or a multiple with the multiple core, we can address that with HPE SimpliVity from the day zero. Now, why we can actually perform that? Because we have this ability to do inline dedupe and compression. And because of the inline dedupe and compressions, we actually enable the capability to do hyper efficient data platform, where we can actually provide data replications, data duplications, backup, and name it, any data services across this multiple different data centers in a very quick manner. And that's also translate to the ability to deploy, to actually perform all types of the operation on day 2, day 3, very, very easily and very, very, I would say, efficiently. I've got one customers that actually is struggling at one time, they're trying to actually working on issues with the SimpliVity. I'll admit, this is actually not, I was sent for customers that wasn't really happy 100%. One of the word though that I catch when they are actually discussing about, oh, you know what, I think that we need to move away from SimpliVity. And then I saw a couple of those admin, the backup admin, their face goes blue. Why? Because they said that, boss, what are we going to do to back up all of this data in 3 minutes? So that actually gives you the idea. The fact that, the efficiency, once embedded with the customers, it really, really gelled in, and then they really, really look forward to it. But what makes you more efficient once actually we provided all this platform with the instant inline dedupe and compressions, we also provided the REST API to actually do a lot of the automations. That's where then, you'll be able to perform more of your operation with less amount of the work. And here it is, options that you're gonna be able to go through today. There are 5 different notebooks. I'll go through the basics. There are 2 basics actually. If you look at the the up here on the right, here, underneath the learn the options available to you today. Number 1 is basic REST API with PowerShell. And then I will also talk about how to use the SimpliVity Power CLI modules and PowerShell modules, and also the VMware Power CLI modules together in order to make, your efficiency to become a lot more a lot more agile or a lot more effective in terms of handling different type of the use cases. And then it's not about PowerShell. We also have ability to work with Python. So on the third notebook, we'll learn about basic REST API with Python. And the fourth notebook will actually also experience the new introductions of the SimpliVity Python module. So this is actually introduced about this year, and then we want people to actually take an experience of it and see if there are actually suggestions on how to expand this particular module. And the last one, because we have the Python module, we actually that enables us to actually introduce the Ansible toolkit. So we have an Ansible toolkit that allows you to be able to perform any type of the desired state type of automation. So remember, desired state, once you make changes, it will work in the schedule to ensure that your configuration stays the same. Today's labs is going to be delivered through the Jupyter notebooks, and I will walk through with you guys on how to execute the lab. Okay. All right. So before doing that, just one more slide. I just want to give you guys some idea where to start. I mean, obviously, you guys are familiar with SimpliVity. You guys probably already seen the HPE developer website. And then there should be the locations that is posted here that indicates where you can get the details of each of these resources that are available for the HPE SimpliVity. And one last note, if you want to do it yourself in order to get this better understanding of the SimpliVity REST API, SimpliVity itself provides this interactive website. Some people call it Swagger, and you can actually get it, be able to use it by pointing your browser into the MVA, which is the newly introduced in the SimpliVity 4.00. Or you can point it to one of the IP address of the OVC, so the OptiStack virtual controllers. Over there, you can walk in, you can present, you can see the presentations and then walk through each of the resources, actions, and then see what is the type of response and all of the semantic that is required about creating the parameters, also figuring out what is the result also from there. Now, moving forward, I just want to give you some ideas. What's in the pipeline, what is already available. So you can see PowerShell is available, Python is available, Ansible available, Golang is also available. Now, just one note, the PowerShell is actually available in the PowerShell gallery. So you can actually install the SimpliVity modules for the purpose of the automations directly using the install dash modules from the PowerShell gallery. Regarding to the Golang, this is a new SimpliVity's module, and then it's actually introduced in order for us to provide some support for the Terraform. And if you have access to the lab and you enter the student with the IDs that is provided to you, logging with the StuDisco 2020. Yeah, I love Discoing. And you should be able to see this particular menu. This is actually the notebooks, Jupyter notebooks. Now, the nice thing about this, or the good thing about using Jupyter Notebook, is that we can actually follow through the exercise in a one by one. And the same time, at the same time, you could actually be able to read some instruction that is embedded into it using the Markdown. Couple of things that I want you to be well aware. On the left here, this is actually a folder. So you can actually go down into different folders. And then, because eventually at certain exercise, we will have to go through a particular folder like this one, the demo_playbooks. To go up higher, all you need to do is click on the 3 dots over there, and that should put you back into the main folder. Okay, questions before I go? You're welcome to raise your hand or to type it in the presentation. Hope that you guys are ready. And all we need to do is just open the first notebook. If you double click on it, then you will be able to see this particular notebook, which is the introduction of it. Now, you can see that, you have some introductions, and then this is cool pictures that we have over here. And it introduce both of us, and then also provide you guys with some information for Twitter and LinkedIn. And just like I have been presenting, today we're going to learn about SimpliVity automation. And then we are using SimpliVity REST API, but the SimpliVity REST API that will be encapsulated by different automation platforms. So I know that we can do all the things using the SimpliVity REST API, but these are very, very cryptic. I'll be honest with you, as we can actually see it. For doing testing to understand what they are, it's okay. But eventually, if you want to do automation, we want to go a little bit higher in terms of the language or scheme that we be using. The lab flow, as we going through today, it will be following the notebook one by one. And of course, I'll be your lead here. We'll go through each one of them, and then have everybody does the same deal also on their presentations on their laptop. So for those that are interested, you can actually download the Jupyter notebooks and install it in your laptop. Now, maybe the challenge is that getting a particular SimpliVity, but if you have a SimpliVity already available in your lab, all you need to do is modifying some of the parameters, such as the IP address of the office or MBA, and it should be able to use the same lab to use the same notebook for your labs. Okay. Now, let's go through some of this exercise today. So the SimpliVity that we'll be using today is available as we call it the 6+2+2. So it's actually is a SimpliVity with 4 different clusters. The first cluster has about 6 different nodes, and they are all connected through the network, just like what I've shown over here. So these are the name of the data set, the clusters, and then each of the clusters, they are networked together, and then each one of them contains some OmniStack hosts, but only CC_virtual 00 has 6 different OmniStack hosts, while the rest only have 2 different OmniStack hosts. And they are actually running cluster version 4.01. So this is actually running SimpliVity version 4.01 that just released about I would say about the beginning of the year. Okay. How they look like. This is the pictures that I took from the vCenter. It will be great to have it in your lab, because then you can actually monitor your vCenters. I will actually see if I could connect to the to the lab also. That way, then we can see the vCenters in live. Okay, it looks like that I have a bit of a challenge here to connect. I'll have to figure that one out later. But in order to do our exercise, all we need to do is just follow the chapters lab number 1 PowerShell example here. And then we can click on the notebook Jupyter Lab 1. And then that will actually bring up this particular notebook. And then this is the SimpliVity PowerShell REST API example, very basic. So this is basically the introductions of how the SimpliVity REST API is being used. And then we also going to introduce the way to actually interface to it, but all of them are actually is available through the SimpliVity module as we go through later. Now, this one is actually the lab is actually running on the PowerShell Core v7.0. So let me know, if you guys are not sure, there are some Windows users, but there are also Linux users. You don't have to be worrying right now. PowerShell, as of today, Microsoft understand that, it's a common language. It's being used by both different type of the users, both the Unix and also the Microsoft. You can run PowerShell Core v7 and then running it inside the Ubuntu Linux as what we are going to go through today. All right. And then today we will be actually doing some exercise following from the clusters in the first one. So we would be actually connecting via the one of the OVC, and I'll pick up the OVC 16.31.87.101. How do you get this information if you have your own SimpliVity? All you need to do is go through the more objects and then click on the HPE host. So let me repeat that again. From your cluster, if you are, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the VMware administration. From your cluster, right click, go through more objects, and then click on this HPE SimpliVity host. Then you will see the list of the IP address, which is actually the list of the management IP address for the OmniStack virtual controller. You can use one of them. If you have an MVA, I know most of you guys are SimpliVity aware, but the MVA is the new model of the management that is introduced in 4.0 that allows us to actually expand the clusters, without using less of number of vCenter. Then all you can do is point that to the MVA. But today I will use one of the OVC. So this is the exercise as we can actually go through. I provided also the username and the password. So this username and password are the username and password for the administration. One thing that I will give you a note, moving forward after SimpliVity 3.70, you have to ensure that the security protocol or the certificate that is actually used for handshaking is based on TLS 1.2. So this particular line is very important if you guys want to do it with your, if we want to enable the automations inside your data centers, as the security has already advanced. Apparently SSL 3.0 or before that as TLS 1.0.1.1, it's kind of depicted as of end of life. So there's not much of the, in order to be able to support the a lot of the security nowadays, you have to be able to run in TLS 1.2. So let's do the exercise. Just highlight this particular chapters, click on the run. So that's how you actually execute your exercise. Isn't it easy? And it's all been written already. So there's no need for you to be able to type it in. All you need to do is just click it on. But there will be times for you to click it in. So now we got all the parameters that we needed in order to log in, and we set the security protocols to set the fact that to ignore the SSL certificate because it was a self-signed certificate. We will actually perform the operations to actually get the OAuth token. So SimpliVity REST API is performing the authentication using OAuth number 2, OAuth 02. You can Google it for better understanding, but basically what it does is authenticating using the username and password. And then as a result of that, once the user is authenticated, then they will use a token and then carry the token for every operations that we needed. So this is how do you generate the structure actually to generate the access token. And then we will be using that for more of the exercises. All you need to do is just click on the play again. And you can see the informations that was actually returned from the creations of the parameters that is required for us to generate the OAuth token. So the REST API is actually a language that is actually a text-based language that is actually transmitted through the HTTP, and then it contains all kind of the string. And then this particular exercise that we did is adding those string into the parameters so that we can be able to continue with our exercise. For us to be able to communicate through SimpliVity with PowerShell, we use the invoke REST method, and we'll see what we'll be using for the Python. And again, all you need to do is just click on the exercise there, and then we can see that our access is enabled. And we are provided with this access token here with a special GUID ID, I think, which can be hard to copy. And then we will copy out those access token out and then use it for the exercise to see the list of the backups inside. Oh, my apology. This is not Las Vegas, but it's our today's federation, basically. So again, just right click on that and then to create the header that will be used to create the REST API call, and then issue a GET request. And here we are going to actually show the content. So here it is what we have in terms of the backup that is available inside the machines as of today. Using these particular tools, now we understand how to get the informations about our backup. Now let's do some operation to modify it. Something that is fun, like here, you know, what I did. Oops, I'm sorry. If you get to this point where you close the code, you can actually just click that three dots and then be able to open it up. And then we will actually modify or change, pick a random sequence, and then use that number to identify the name of the backup. And then we're going to change it to the day's date. What we will do is use the same token that we obtained from the authentications, and then creates the string on the URL for us to be able to do the changing of the name, and then execute the post operation. Now, in SimpliVity, the post operation is asynchronous operation. It means that when the SimpliVity REST API is actually invoked to perform the operations, it will return back automatically, but it will also return a very long UID like this in a string, which contains basically the task. So with using that task ID, you should be able to perform an identifications of how the process of the post has already been. So there are, of course, you know, when you invoke it, definitely, because it's asynchronous process, it's still in progress. And then for you to be able to figure it out whether the progress is completed, you issue another SimpliVity REST API. And in this case, it's completed. So it takes a bit time before it's completed, but it's step to figure it out. The whole operation is two-step process. Now, for you guys to see what's the changes, we can actually issue the same type of the operations again, and I am student 351, and apparently, you know, I have actually copied that particular operations, and you can see that that particular backup has already been changes there. And here, there we go. You know, this is how we actually do the automation using PowerShell for REST API. I can see some students already doing that. Yeah. All right. Now, one thing that I want to actually remind you guys, SimpliVity REST API, if you're looking at it, this is particular relationship of the objects that are being manipulated inside the SimpliVity. So, for example, a backup information, it has some informations that are actually part of the OmniStack cluster. And the OmniStack cluster consists of many hosts. So if you're looking at the SimpliVity REST API Swagger, you would be able to obtain the informations for each of this object by going through the relationship between it. And there are operations here that requires you to be able to correlate multiple different objects to obtain the property that you would use. So currently there is an additional object that was added. They call it the external store, but the external store is actually equivalent like data store. So if you think about it, you know, the external store is the store once. So we actually allow the ability to spec up to a different type of media inside the HPE store once. That actually considered as part of the data store. There we go. Do you want to do automations for this using the basic REST API? I don't think so. So let's go to the lab number 2. In the lab number 2, you know, we will actually see what I use. I'll be honest, you know, I actually do automation. So in my life, you know, I'm actually doing some automation. In fact, I've got a couple of the videos in the YouTube that talks about the automation that I did using the PowerShell. Go ahead and take a look at it. Google on the HPE SimpliVity REST API. I actually have a couple of video that shows how I actually automate the data center that I manage for the purpose of the labs, for the purpose of demo, you know, all those type of things has to be set up in a certain manner, and then I automate them, and then you guys can see the benefit of it. First thing first, using the SimpliVity, what we need to do is load, instead of doing a very primitive type of operations, we will start by loading up this module. So this module is, if you think about it, it contains all of the predefined features or the functions that you can actually perform at the higher level, such as, performing the backup with providing some name of the backup, for example, rather than issuing all kind of the operation using that parameters as part of the URL string. Now you can actually perform it with the object itself, the name of the objects or the ID of the objects. But for this exercise, I will actually load the two different modules. Number one is HPE SimpliVity. Now the HPE SimpliVity module was written by Roy Atkins, but it's already available inside the SimpliVity PowerShell gallery. So this is something that you can load up right away. In fact, there are multiple different SimpliVity modules that's available in the PowerShell gallery. And the first one, the HPE SVT commandlets, it's allowing you to actually modify, to do the operations to obtain the SSL certificate that is required by the SimpliVity for the operations with the vCenters. So if you want to swap your vCenter with SimpliVities, you can use this particular REST API to modules to perform that operation, or PowerShell module to do this. And this is the PowerShell modules that we'll be using today. So this was written by Roy Atkins. It has some examples in here. It has some information on how to download it, and you can actually contact him if you think that there is additional information or features that you want to add. So it's available already, that accessible. So how do you load this? This is PowerShell syntax to load those, and those modules actually have been loaded. Well, so what I'm trying to do over here is just showing off to you guys the fact that they have been loaded, and then all of the modules that already been available. So you can see that, the PowerShell modules for the VMware has already been loaded. PowerShell modules for the HPE SimpliVity has already been loaded. I set it up so that the PowerCLI for the VMware will bypass the certificate warning so that we can actually log in very easily. And then how do you use this type of modules? It's going to be a lot easier, I promise you. Let's load up all the parameters that I have here. So right now, we are actually going to do automation with both the vCenter and also the SimpliVity. So this is what happened here. So first thing first, we load up all the parameters or credentials for the vCenters and also the credentials for the SimpliVity. And then we're going to create two sessions, both the SimpliVity and the vCenters. This is for the SimpliVities. We are actually creating the session. And then here for the vCenters, then we are creating the session also. And now we have the ability to actually provide information of our SimpliVity federation, both from the SimpliVity module or the VMware PowerCLI module. Apparently, we can do two things in the same time, two things with the same way, actually. I mean, a different way, I'm sorry. And here it is, if we are actually displaying the information about HPE SimpliVity, but this is actually coming through the SimpliVity module. So using the SimpliVity modules, we would able to actually provide information of the virtual machine that is located in which cluster name in which data center. With the PowerCLI, we can do the same type of operation. It's a little bit more complicated here, but you can also obtain the same information. There is a difference. Apparently, SimpliVity module understand that those OmniCube VC VM, those are special VM. Those are virtual controllers. They're not actually something that can be modified, but with the PowerCLI or the VMware PowerCLI, it actually recognizes all different parts of the virtual machine and display it right over here. But we can see the power of the approaching an issue on your hand and see of the use case that you will be using. And you can do it, basically one way or another. Why I want to bring it up? Because that's what makes you agile. That's what makes you able to do a lot more complicated operations that will fit into your use cases. So let's go through some exercise here. Number one, let's go figure it out. Whoops, click on that triple dot if you're closing it. And we're gonna discover a virtual machine by the name Ubuntu VD Bench. All we need to do is just execute that, and then the operations of the get SVT VM will return that one particular virtual machine located in this particular host under this data center name, under this cluster name. Now, we're going to clone that particular machine. And then we are using the SimpliVity clone, which is actually more powerful than the VMware clone. Why is it? Of course, with the hyper efficiency, we can actually perform the clone of the 500 gigabytes virtual machines, you know, because it's got dedupe and compress, when the clone will return within about less than 10 seconds. But what we want to do is actually we want to have a use case where we want to power up this VM and start performing the operations into it. But wait a minute, power on, SimpliVity might not have the functions to do that. And worse is that this is actually a VM that is based on Windows. SimpliVity PowerShell modules only understand those 6 objects, but it doesn't understand what is the Windows virtual machine state, you know, what is the power state, what is the current folders inside that VM. That is where you are going to be using your other modules in order to perform your operations. So go ahead and you can actually just clone, and we'll see the operation will complete it right now. Okay, well, it's still in the progress, but I can see there are a couple of the operations already done there going on. And once the clone is completed, oh, let me just, this is actually very good to be able to show the my vCenter. Now I'm actually logging into the lab. And as we can see here, you know, the operations of cloning the VM has already been completed. And, you know, the result is actually shown over there. But let's do something else, you know, let's do more operations into it. And what we want to do, we want to power up the VM. And then first thing that we start to realize, oh my goodness, Ron is mixing the SimpliVity PowerCLI. Now I'm using SimpliVity PowerCLI in order to perform the operations of powered up. And the problem is when we power it up, we don't know exactly, just like I said, you know, what is the state of the OS? Well, one thing that we can do before the OS is boot up and running, we can interrogate the VM tools. So if you have a VM, the VM that is already powered up, we know that there is actually a VMware tools that is connected to it, and we can actually monitor if that particular virtual machine is currently up and running. And then you do that using the PowerCLI. And then of course, you know, if you actually executing it, we realize that, you know, oh yeah, we powered up the virtual machine. I think this one is actually get powered on, but it doesn't mean that it's on. It's still going through the boot up. And I'm just going to actually show it off where they are, the situations. I think it's already booting up, but as you can see, that network is it's not up and running again. So before you do any operations against that virtual machines, you have to understand, you know, what is the state of the virtual machine. And then that particular virtual machines only will be available once the tools is up and running. And once we do that, we know exactly that, you know, we can actually execute any other operations with it. So that is how we actually use the combinations of different tools in order to increase the agility of our automations. Okay, move on to the next lab. All right. I promise you, I'm a PowerShell boy, unfortunately, you know, but I'm learning that world is not just PowerShell, you know, world is not just Windows, you know, Microsoft Windows. In fact, what becomes more prominent is the Unix, you know, because of the containers, people are moving toward Unix, and then currently the Unix container, most of the containers are based on Linux. Windows is still working on that. They're trying to actually improve the containerd and then add the ability to be in the equivalent to the Linux container, but that's not happening that much. So you will actually use some other language. In this case, Python. So if you're in the Python basic exercise here, you'll see some of the tools that I import in order to perform very basic type of the operation. Same deal. As I'm clicking through, I'm actually using the parameters that I use for the URL. So the string that is constructed for the URL. In this particular exercise, I'm going to clone with the particular VM and then name it as the my student ID name here. And then now the your clone VM name has been modified so that it indicated your student ID. So it's very nice help from Fred and the HPE dev team. This is the function that we use to perform posts in order to get the access token. First thing first, authenticate. Access token is indication that you are authenticated. And in this case, same deal like the PowerShell, Python, we got the access token arrive here available. Now we can actually perform further operation, getting the list of these objects like the get the IDs of it. And what we want to do is before we can actually perform the clone, we want to figure out which particular virtual machines that we will clone. And then over here is the operations to figure that one out. And here is the particular VM that we will be cloning. And if you can see, the name of it is, well, you see the name there? Oh, my goodness, this is all the parameters that they have over here. But the particular VM is actually available, as you can see here, in the vCenter. And I'm using actually the second cluster here to perform the cloning. And we got the particular virtual machine ID. And then this is the operations to do the cloning. I created basically a structure that allows us to be able to use multiple different operations coming from these modules that was defined by the PyCurl and JSON, and then construct the URL string and use this particular function to perform the. I'm sorry, I think I'm not supposed to be doing it in here. Sorry, got to do it. Yeah, and right now we'll perform the cloning. And when the operation is completed, we can see the clone that's currently in progress. And inside the vCenters, you can see all the operations that is happening today. Okay, there we go. So the rapid clone is happening. Apparently somebody else also doing some rapid clone together with me, but we can do it fine, because the target name are different, so we can do both of the cloning at the same time. So what is the conclusions that we learn? We also have another way of doing the REST API, and then this is actually what we actually shown you in the very basic method. Do you want to do this for your automation? I doubt it. Let's go to lab number 4. For that, my friend CJS has already created the SimpliVity Python SDK or the automation module. This is available through this particular location, so you guys can actually logging into it, and you will be using the particular. You can actually install it two-way, and then if you're using tools to do installation using the PyPy, is that true for CJS? Is this the tools that is required for installation?
We can install using PyPy, or we can install from source code as well. Both the way you can do it.
There we go. This is so. Thank you, CJS, for providing this information how to do installation. Yeah. Now, we don't need to do installation of the package because my friend Fred has already deployed this in the machine that is actually used for our exercise today. And for what we need to do, we just need to import the module because it's already been installed. And like PowerShell module, this is the PowerShell, I'm sorry, this is the Python module. We have actually used a very, the best way to say that it's a very readable type of the structure, such as, here, we define the information that is required for us to logging into the OVC using this particular JSON. And once we actually completed the informations, we can actually feed it into the OVC function. And then that will return the handles that are the token that will be used in order to perform any type of operations like this. For creating the virtual, we're going to do some information to display all the virtual machine that is available. And then unfortunately, this one is a very long one because this is the structure that is returned by the REST API to inform you what are the virtual machine that is available. For example, here, we have this particular virtual machine with the name tinyvm32003001 and so on. And if I bring in my vCenter, that's the one. What we are displaying is the content of your virtual centers or your SimpliVity federations, except that, this is more toward the string. Then you can start performing the manipulation that you would need to do. So going through the next exercise after displaying it, the virtual machines that is available, and obviously there's quite a lot of them. Now we can actually perform a clone. And then this time we need to actually make modification here. I'm sorry, this should be on the markdown. Just if you click on the markdown here, this particular paragraph, that's what it is actually has to be look like. Okay, sorry about that. What we need to do is actually making a changes now to the new name. And then this time is also Fred has already been helpful to do the automation to change the name of the VM. Then we can start the operations to do the cloning. And oops, something is not right here. I think that this probably the name of the users is not here. Is my token expired? Do you think, Suggest?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Yes, I think you need to run it again.
So I need to go. So that's,
From the first,
the token life cycle.
It doesn't carry the
Yeah. So you go back to the top.
context, right? So normally we don't have to do it when we run the Python script, but here we have to do it.
We have to do it. Okay. So we go after you actually reissue the token. Then you can come back to do the operations over here. And let's see what's happening here inside the vCenter. Hopefully that the operation continues. It seems to be working on continuous in the background probably. There we go. Rapid clone is happening. So we do this on the PowerShell. We did this on the Python. So yeah, don't be scared when your organization decided that we want to standardize on Python. No deal, no big deal, because SimpliVity has the modules that can support that type of the operation. All right. When we can do some other operation here, like such as the getting the policies, for example, here. And I guess that the token is actually expired again. Oh my goodness, we got to figure that one out. So just have to make this a little bit longer. But,
the problem is here here we don't have the context, right? So normally if you run it from a script, it will be working.
Actually have the context.
Yeah, and we have to get the token every time here.
Correct. And the execution per lines is much faster than this.
Yeah.
But we can definitely improve that. Don't worry. Yeah. We got the experts suggest we'll figure it out how to deal with that. Now, other language binding, you can welcome to take a look at the SimpliVity Go, but I want to show you the last one is the Ansible. So this is the new things that was just recently introduced because we have this Python capability. And inside the Ansible, if you guys are familiar, Ansible is the automation platform that is provided by Red Hat. And the way that you automate is basically using a desired state type of the automation. It means that you have a declarations of the state that you want it to be, and then Ansible will perform the operations to get to that state. So it's a little bit different from the way that we do automations in the PowerShell and Python, which I shown today. Those are a little bit more like declarative. I'm sorry. This is more declarative. That one is more like a command module type of things, you know. So you provide command and then you monitor it. But over here, you declare it and then you let it to monitor by itself. What we will needing. Oh, by the way, it's available in the GitHub here. So HPE GitHub, and of course, you know, any type of the use case that you guys thinking that should go into this Ansible, let us know. Then we will actually make sure that it's added into the list. The requirements, you have to have Ansible more than version, later than version 2.5 and Python later than 3.3. And then of course you have to also install HPE SimpliViton Python SDK. So the Python SDK is the component for the basis of the Ansible. The installations is available over here, but obviously we don't do this because it's already been deployed by Fred. What we need to do is making sure that we have the modules locations of folders is actually added over here, and it's already been customized for each of the person. You can do 3 ways to configure SimpliVities here. And you can do it by in order to configure the OVC information so that you can connect to the SimpliVity. You can use the JSON files. You can use the environment variables, or you can actually just pass it in the playbook itself. Now, I want to be quickly to go through the virtual machine using the Ansible playbook. Suggest maybe you can tell us a little bit, you know, what you're doing here. And this one is actually the first playbook that we will be working on is to create or update the virtual machine. So for you to be able to go to it, all the students go through the directory called demo playbooks, and then the one that we will be using to do this exercise, this particular exercise, is vm_create_or_update.yaml. There you go. So Suggest, what do you think that we're doing here?
Yeah, so here, as you explained in PowerShell, we are using a mix of 2 libraries. Like we need a VMware guest library, and we need our SimpliVity Ansible library, because some of the objects are not available in SimpliVity. So yes, to create a VM, so we need a VMware Ansible library. So VMware guest, the first playbook is VMware guest. We are using VMware guest library, that is a VMware library. So to create a VM, we'll be using it. So all other SimpliVity specific operation, we'll be using our SimpliVity library.
Okay. Yep. So guys, so remember, VMware also have the modules that is available for the VMware, and then that's called the PyMami. So if you guys want to figure it out, better information more about it, go ahead, Google PyMami. It will be a lot more information about what things that Suggest do. So if you made a modification here, I just need to make modifications to the name so that it will actually be using the separate names, so we are not hitting each other or conflicting. You want to save your YAML. So once you save it like this, you can go back to your Ansible basic notebook and perform the operation. And the operation is very simple here. What we are doing is creating a virtual machine and click on the play. And then once it's happening, you can see all the activity that is going on. But let me take a look and let me show you guys what happens here inside the vCenter. Voila. You can see that this particular virtual machine that has been defined inside the Ansible is actually available there. So what about if I delete this? What do you think, Suggest?
If you're running it again, like in the Ansible playbook, if you're running it again, Ansible will be checking if there is any configuration difference. If there is any configuration difference, it will be updating it. So the idempotency is very important here for Ansible. So when you want to update a VM, you can just use the same playbook, change the configuration. Let's say we want to update the network, just update the network and run the playbook again. It'll be updating it. So if you want to delete it, just change the state. Now we have state present. So if you're changing the state to absent, so then the VM will be deleting. So it's all about states. We have multiple states for a resource.
Great jobs, great jobs. You can see that right away. You know, the Ansible's automatically figuring it out and it actually redo the state that is actually desired. And we can make changes to the YAML book, and then we can perform all those type of operations. Same thing here. Let's go continue with the next operations. I'm almost running out of times, but I think that we should probably hit it in the same, pretty close. We're going to be taking a backup of the particular virtual machine. So we'll go open up the YAML here, this SVT-VM backup YAML, make a changes on the name of the VM that we want to back up, which is the VM that we just created. And we're going to save the YAML, coming back into the Ansible here, and then run it. And we can see that, oh my goodness, now we got some actions going on over here. It's supposed to create a backup. And we can definitely take a look at the content here. The backup has already been created. So that is how you actually perform the automation using the Ansible. And then these are type of the desired state, and which is very, very powerful. With that, I just want to let you guys go through the exercise, the two others exercise by yourself. You know, I mean, it's all very simple. All we need to do, the other one is cloning here. And I'm just change the name. Because I'm running out. I just only have about 2 minutes. But I think because of the automation, we can actually able to accomplish that, you know, within such a very short time. We're gonna set the virtual machine, the backup policy. So we're gonna set the policy here. And we should be able to execute it again. Yeah, so just want to go back to the conclusion. Let me just go back to the conclusion before to close that. Thank you again for attending this HackShack webinars. As you can see, you know, the SimpliVity is a product not because, you know, it's just, basically is an infrastructure, but that's not the point of the SimpliVity. The point of SimpliVity is making sure that you can actually perform your operations, not day zero, not deployment. How many times people deploy? I don't know, maybe just one time, but you need to perform all kind of the operation. You have to meet your compliance. You have to be able to perform the data protections. You have to perform data, the disaster recovery. That's where the SimpliVity is designed to. So with the automation, that will make you even more agile. And we have some other workshop with SimpliVities, and then the upcoming, there is upcoming hands-on lab, and then you can find it on that particular number. If you want to learn anything about SimpliVity, you can go to developer.hpe.com, platform HPE SimpliVity.home. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.